Black father Malik was driving home through a raging storm when he spotted a white woman trapped inside her car, windows fogged, engine dead, and her head slowly dropping like she was running out of breath. If this already made your blood boil, hit like and subscribe right now, because stories like this are still happening, and the world needs to hear them. Malik slammed his brakes, jumped out into the rain, and ran toward her car. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" His voice shook as thunder cracked above him. The woman didn't move. Her breaths were shallow, trapped in a sealed metal box filling with fog. Malik raised both hands so she could see he wasn't a threat, but she was too far gone to respond. He pulled on the door. Locked. He circled around, shouting over the storm, "Just hang on. I'm right here." No reply. The panic in his chest rose like floodwater. He pressed his forehead against the glass, seeing her eyes half closed, lips pale. She was suffocating. "Sorry about this," he whispered, and drove his elbow through the window. Glass exploded across the seat, slicing his skin open. Rain blasted inside instantly. Malik ignored the blood running down his arm as he unlocked the door and pulled her upright. "Breathe. You're okay. Just breathe." Her eyes fluttered open. "Why, you're hurt." "I'll be fine," Malik said. "Just stay with me." Headlights flashed behind him. A truck skidded to a stop. A white man jumped out, eyes wide at the broken glass. "Hey, get away from her." Before Malik could speak, the man rushed forward and smashed a fist into Malik's jaw. Another punch hit his ribs. A second man joined, shouting, "He's trying to steal her car." Malik didn't fight back. Not with two strangers, not with his son waiting at home, not when one wrong move could destroy his whole life. He covered his head, taking blow after blow, rain mixing with blood on the pavement. "Stop. I'm helping her," he gasped, voice drowned by the storm. The woman finally found her strength. She pushed the door open, waving weakly. "Stop. He saved me. He saved my life." The attackers froze, guilt washing over their faces as they looked at Malik bleeding on the ground. Malik stood slowly, wincing, breathing through pain that felt older than the night itself. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I know what you thought." He turned back to the woman, helping her steady herself in the rain. "Try to sit. I'll check your battery." She whispered, "What's your name?" "Malik," he said, never imagining that weeks later he would stand trembling in a courtroom and she would walk in wearing a black robe, holding his entire future in her hands. The storm had passed by the time Malik reached his small apartment, but the weight in his chest hadn't. His ribs burned from the punches, and dry blood clung to his arm where the glass had cut deep. Still, he pushed the door open quietly. He didn't want to wake his 5-year-old son. A soft night light glowed from Jaden's room. Malik peeked inside. The little boy lay curled under dinosaur sheets, one tiny hand clutching a stuffed bear. Malik exhaled, tension melting just enough to keep him standing. Whatever the world threw at him, this child kept him going. In the bathroom mirror, his face told the truth. A swollen cheekbone, split lip, and cuts peppered across his arm. He cleaned them with shaking hands, trying not to wince. Pain wasn't new to him, but tonight's pain carried humiliation, anger, and something deeper, the fear of being misunderstood because of the skin he lived in. He wrapped gauze around his arm, tucked his shirt in the laundry basket, and stepped into the kitchen prepared for the next day. Work, custody requirements, bills stacked like accusations. Everything needed to be perfect. One wrong step, and someone could say he wasn't stable enough to raise Jaden. The next morning, Jaden stumbled in, rubbing his eyes. "Daddy, why your face look like you hit a robot?" Malik chuckled despite the ache. Something like that. "Buddy, did you help a lady?" "Yeah," Malik said. "I did." Jaden grinned. "That's what superheroes do." Malik froze for a moment, his throat tightening. The world never saw him as a superhero. But to this kid, he was everything. Later, at the warehouse break room, Malik stood quietly as co-workers whispered. Everybody had heard about the missing scanner. Supervisors walked past him with narrowed eyes. He could feel judgments crawling across his skin. Then Devin. The smug floor supervisor approached with the same fake smirk that always meant trouble. "Malik," he said loudly, making sure the whole room heard. "Boss wants to see you. Now." Malik followed him into the office where Barksdale, red-faced and irritated, slammed a folder on the desk. "You know why you're here. The scanner vanished right after you handled the last pallet." Malik kept his voice steady. "Sir, I left early. Terrence saw me clock out." "Your word means nothing right now," Barksdale sneered. "Corporate wants answers. And if you've got custody of a kid, good luck keeping it when this hits court." Malik felt his stomach twist. His job, his reputation, his son, everything he'd rebuilt was being ripped apart by an accusation with no proof, just bias dressed as certainty. He walked out of the office with shoulders tense, breath tight, knowing something was coming, something bigger than last night's storm. And for the first time, he feared the damage wouldn't stay outside. It might come straight for his home, his son, and the future he was fighting for. Malik spent his lunch break sitting alone on a crate near the loading dock, staring at the rainwater dripping from a roof. His ribs throbbed every time he breathed too deep. He tried calling HR, tried explaining he left early, tried reminding them he'd never had a single write-up, but nobody wanted to hear him. Nobody ever did. He checked his phone. 2 missed calls from social services. His heart dropped. Not today. Please, not today. Before he could call back, the warehouse door slammed open. Barksdale stormed out waving a paper. "There it is." Corporate reviewed the footage, and the timestamp lines up with you handling the last pallet. "You're done." Malik stood slowly. "Sir, I told you. I wasn't even here when—" "Save it." Barksdale snapped. "I trusted hiring someone like you, and now look where we are." The words cut deeper than any punch from the night before. "Someone like you." He'd heard versions of that line his whole life. In school, in job interviews, in stores. Now here, in front of everyone. Devin folded his arms, smirking. "Boss, should I call the sheriff? Theft is theft." Malik could barely breathe. "I didn't steal anything. Check the records. Check my time card." Devin stepped closer, voice dripping with fake authority. "Why are you getting so defensive, Malik? Guilty conscience." A few workers peeked around corners, whispering, eyes on him, judging him, labeling him. Barksdale shoved a paper against Malik's chest. "We're pressing charges. Expect a court summons. And good luck explaining this during your custody hearing." Custody hearing. Jaden, his entire world. Malik stepped back, gripping the rail behind him as dizziness hit. He'd been beaten last night for trying to save a stranger. Now he was being destroyed today for a crime he didn't commit. "Sir, please. I have a son. I can't lose this job over a lie." Barksdale didn't care. "Get off my property before I call the cops." Malik walked out the side door holding his ribs, holding his breath, holding in the anger boiling inside him. He knew what would happen if he snapped. One wrong move, one raised voice, and they'd slap a dangerous label on him that would follow him forever. He reached his old Chevy, leaned his head against the steering wheel, and let the weight crash down. His son's drawings were still taped to the dashboard. One said, "Daddy is my hero." His phone buzzed again. Social services voicemail. "Mr. Thompson, your custody reevaluation depends heavily on stable employment. Please prepare documentation." Malik shut his eyes tight. He felt everything slipping through his fingers, his job, his name, his reputation, his future, his son. He whispered to himself, "I didn't do anything wrong. Why does it always end like this?" He didn't know that the storm wasn't done with him. And the next time he stood in front of people judging him, it wouldn't be a warehouse supervisor. It would be someone with far more power. Someone he had already saved once without knowing. The courthouse smelled like old paper and cold floors. Malik sat on a hard wooden bench, hands clasped so tight his knuckles had turned pale. His lawyer, Victor, flipped through a thin folder beside him, much thinner than the stack the prosecutor carried. "You ready?" Victor whispered. "No," Malik said honestly, "but I'm here." The bailiff opened the door. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Brooke Anderson." Malik stood, and the world shifted under his feet. The judge who stepped through the doorway wasn't a stranger. It was her, the same white woman he dragged out of a fogged-up car, the same woman whose window he shattered with his own bleeding arm, the same woman whose breath he steadied while people attacked him. Judge Brooke Anderson walked the bench, robe flowing, posture strong, yet her eyes gave away something else. A flicker, a recognition buried so deep only someone desperate enough would catch it. She took her seat without looking at him again. Victor leaned closer. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." Malik swallowed. "I saved her." "What?" 3 weeks ago. Storm. Broken window. That was her." Victor stared at him in disbelief. But the bailiff called the room to order. Court is now in session. The people versus Malik Thompson. The prosecutor, a polished white man with a perfect haircut and a smirk that matched his suit, rose from his table. "Your Honor, the defendant was the last individual seen with the missing warehouse scanner. His history of verbal warnings." Malik clenched his jaw. History? He'd never been written up once. Judge Brooke lifted a hand. "Proceed with documented evidence." Her voice was steady, sharp, professional. No emotion, no hint that she knew him. But the way she watched the papers, the way her brow tightened, Malik could tell something in her didn't sit right. Victor stood. "Your Honor, the accusations are built on assumption, not fact. My client clocked out early, verified by witnesses. No physical evidence ties him to the missing equipment." Brooke flipped through the documents slowly, the room silent except for the soft rustle of paper. Then she paused. A tiny pause, barely a second, but Malik saw it. He felt it. She lifted a form to the light. "Mr. Langston, these are photocopies of photocopies. We're the originals." Langston hesitated. "These are the files we received from the employer." Her tone sharpened, controlled but firm. "I see compression smears and mismatched timestamps." She set the file down with a quiet finality, a decision forming. This court cannot verify these documents as authentic. Therefore, Langston stepped forward urgently. "Your Honor, the company. There will be a forensic audit before this case proceeds." Whispers rippled across the courtroom. Victor's eyes widened. "She just bought us time. That's almost unheard of." But Malik wasn't listening to him. He was watching her. For the briefest moment, Judge Brooke lifted her gaze. Her eyes met Malik's, just one soft, sharp, and full of something that looked like memory. Then she looked away, returning fully to her role. Court adjourned until further review. The gavel struck like thunder. People filed out. Victor grabbed Malik's arm. "This is good. This is very good." But Malik barely heard him, because the woman who held his fate had already walked out courtroom. And this time, she wasn't the one trapped. She was the one choosing whether he survived the storm or not. Judge Brooke Anderson closed the door to her chambers with the same calm she showed in court. But the moment it clicked shut, her shoulders dropped, and she let out a long, shaking breath. She pulled off her robe, folded it neatly over the chair, and stared at the documents again. The timestamps were irregular, the signatures mismatched, the compression smears exactly where fabricated reports usually reveal themselves. She whispered to herself, "They set him up." For a moment, she stood still, remembering the storm, the cracked window, the bleeding arm reaching toward her, the voice telling her to breathe. Now she was the one who needed air. Across town, Malik sat at his kitchen table with Victor, anxiety twisting deep in his gut. "You think she recognized me?" he asked. Victor shrugged. She didn't have to. She saw something off in the paperwork. Judges don't usually push back that hard unless they have a reason. What reason? Malik whispered. Victor looked at him, then exhaled. Maybe because she saw you clearly, even if the rest of them don't. But Malik didn't trust Hope. Hope was dangerous. Hope got people hurt. Meanwhile, Judge Brooke wasn't resting. She met 2 compliance officers in the Department of Labor early the next morning. No robe, no courtroom, just a navy suit and purpose in her eyes. "I want everything," she said. Attendance logs, camera footage, internal complaints, supervisor records, especially anything involving Malik Thompson. The lead investigator, Mara, frowned. Judge Anderson, you sure you want to push this hard? Brooke met her gaze without flinching. If someone is using the system to target a black father to protect themselves, I'm not letting that slide. They walked into the warehouse unannounced. Managers stiffened. Workers froze. Devin's face blanched the second he spotted the investigators. His smirk vanished. Mara spoke firmly. We'll need your full cooperation. Please unlock your office. Devin swallowed. Is this about the missing scanner? Because I already told corporate. Brooke cut him off. We're not here for your stories. We're here for your evidence. Inside his office, filing cabinets jammed with messy paperwork barely opened. Devin nervously tapped his foot while officers downloaded security logs. One camera, ignored in the employer's report, captured the truth. Devin placing the scanner in his own locked drawer, walking away, then returning minutes later to pretend it was missing. Brooke leaned closer to the screen, jaw tightening. Replay that. The footage didn't lie. He staged everything. Mara folded her arms. You know this is fraud, right? Fabricating theft. Could wreck a custody case, job, everything. Devin's voice cracked. It was just a mistake. Brooke stepped toward him. A mistake is forgetting to clock out. This is destroying a father's life. Across town, Malik picked up Jaden from school early. Jaden tugged on his hand and asked innocently, Daddy, am I still going to live with you? Malik felt the floor fall out from under him. Yes, he whispered, kneeling to meet his son's eyes. I'll fight for you. Always. Jaden nodded slowly, wrapping his arms around him. As Malik lifted him, he noticed a black sedan parked across the street. Behind a windshield, he saw auburn hair pulled into a tight bun. Judge Brooke. She didn't wave. She didn't step out. She just nodded once, as if saying, I'm working on it. Then she drove away. By evening, the investigators had compiled everything. Footage, records, hidden complaints from workers, including one stating Malik had been targeted for months. Brooke read every page. This isn't negligence, she said quietly. This is racism covered in paperwork. Mara nodded. We'll file the findings tonight. Brooke's voice dropped to a whisper. Good. That man saved my life. Now it's my turn. Across the city, Malik sat on his porch with a cup of cold coffee, staring at nothing. He didn't know an entire case was being dismantled for him. He didn't know the trap set for him was already collapsing. He didn't know the woman he saved was fighting harder for him than anyone ever had. And tomorrow, everything would change. The next afternoon, Malik was slicing bread for Jaden's snack when a sharp knock rattled the apartment door. He opened it to find a courier holding a sealed envelope. Delivery from Malik Thompson. Malik signed, closed the door, and stood there staring at the envelope as if it might explode. His fingers trembled as he tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of official court stationery. Notice of dismissal. The People versus Malik Thompson. Case dropped. He read the words twice, then a third time. His breath shook. His knees nearly gave out. His phone rang. Victor's voice blasted through the speaker, excited, breathless. Malik, they dropped everything. Fraud, theft, misconduct gone. How? Malik asked, voice barely a whisper. There was an audit, Victor said. Real footage. Real records. Enough to bury Devin legally. Your judge, he paused, choosing his words. She didn't just see the truth. She acted on it. Malik sat down slowly, feeling the weight that had crushed him for weeks finally lift. Jaden ran over, holding a crayon drawing. Daddy, you win? Malik looked at his son, then at the dismissal letter, and his eyes warmed. Yeah, he whispered. We won. Across town, Judge Brooke stood in her quiet office staring at the empty courtroom. She had signed the dismissal herself. She had watched the system attempt to swallow an innocent man and refused to let it happen. Not when she owed him her life, not when justice demanded it. But there was no applause, no recognition, no cameras, Just a woman sitting alone in a silent room, knowing she finally made something right. That evening, Malik took Jaden for ice cream. They sat on the curb outside the small shop as the sun dipped low behind the buildings. Jaden swung his legs happily. "Daddy, you're not sad anymore?" Malik smiled softly. "Not today, buddy." His phone buzzed. A number not saved, but familiar. A text. "I'm glad you're free. You deserved that from the start." Malik stared at the message. His heart thudded. Before he could reply, a second message appeared. "You saved me first. I never forgot." He typed back slowly. "Thank you for everything." There was a pause. Then, "Maybe we should talk sometime, not as judge and defendant, just as two people." Malik exhaled, a slow, stunned breath leaving his chest. Justice had been served. The trap had been undone. The lie that nearly destroyed his life had collapsed. And now the woman in the storm was extending something he didn't expect. A connection. Across the street, cars rolled by, lights flickering on wet pavement. Jaden leaned against him, finishing the last bite of his cone. Malik wrapped an arm around him, holding him close. For the first time in years, the future didn't look dark or heavy. It looked open, possible, hopeful, and he had no idea what tomorrow held. But he knew this. He wasn't facing the world alone anymore. Not after everything they had survived. Monday morning arrived bright and calm, sunlight spilling to the blinds of Malik's apartment. The world felt different now. Lighter, steadier, like the storm that once tried to drown him had finally run out of rain. Jaden bounced around the living room, wearing superhero socks and a backpack almost bigger than him. "Daddy, is today your new job day?" Malik smiled as he adjusted his collar. "Yeah, buddy, first day." The community outreach position at Jaden's school wasn't glamorous, but it was honest, respected, a job that wouldn't label him before he even spoke. They walked to school hand in hand. Malik watched parents chat by the gates, teachers greeting kids by name. He felt like he belonged somewhere, maybe for the first time in a long time. Inside the hallway, Jaden tugged on his shirt. "Daddy, if the judge lady sees you, is she gonna smile?" Malik laughed under his breath. "Maybe." Jaden nodded. "She should. You saved her." His small confidence made Malik's chest warm. He knelt, tied Jaden's shoelaces tighter, and whispered, "Go be great today." Jaden sprinted into class. As Malik straightened, he sensed someone standing at the corner of the hallway. Brooke. No robe, no bench, just a woman holding a folder close to her chest, the faintest, unsure smile on her face. He walked over slowly. "Didn't expect to see you here." "I had a meeting nearby," she said, then added softly, "and I want to make sure you were okay." "I am," he replied, "because of you." "It wasn't just me," she said. "You fought every step." He took a breath. "Still, you didn't have to step in." Brooke looked down, then met his eyes. "You broke a window to save my life. The least I could do was open a door, so you could save your own." They stood there in a quiet moment. No storm, no courtroom, no fear, just two people connected by something neither of them planned. She held out a small card, not official, not professional, just a handwritten number. "In case you ever want to talk, without rules." Malik accepted it. "I'd like that." Her smile wide and gentle, real. Then she stepped back. "You deserve peace, Malik. Go live it." He watched her walk away down the sunlit hallway, each step lighter than the one before. Outside on the playground, Jaden spotted him and waved with both hands. Malik waved back, feeling something shift inside him. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't surviving. He was beginning. He walked out of school into warm morning air, the world no longer heavy on his shoulders. His name was cleared. His son was safe. His dignity restored. And somewhere in the city, the woman whose life he saved had helped save his too. For Malik, justice didn't roar. It arrived quietly, in a courtroom, in a text message, in a single moment of being seen. And now, he finally stepped into a life where he wasn't running from storms. He was walking into the sunlight,